हॉल में प्रस्थान करें। हरे कृष्ण। A humble request to all the devotees to kindly keep their mobile phones on silent mode when the class is on. Hare Krishna.
Radha Yashodanandana Prajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Prajajanaranjana Jamunatira Banachari Jamunatira Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramhamsa Padiparachakacharya Asthotarasata Sri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramhamsa Padiparachakacharya Asthotarasata Sri Srimad Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananti Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Sham Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Sri Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Sri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Shri Dwarka Dham Ki Jai. Sri Mathura Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Gaur Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Rajo Bacha Nidanam Upakateshu Vrishnipocheshu Adhirata yutapa yutapeshu mukyaha Satu katam abhashishta Uddhavo yad Dhadir api tatyaja akritim trayadishaha Rajo vacha Nidhanam upakateshu Vrishni bhojeshu Adhirata yutapa yutapeshu mukya Satu katam avashishta Uddhavo yad Dhadir api tatyaja akritim trayati shaha Nidhanam upakateshu vrishni bhojeshu Adhirata yutapa yutapeshu mukyaha Satu katam avashishta Uddhavo yad Dhadir api tatyaja akritim trayadishaha Anyone else? Raja Uvacha. The king inquired. Nidhanam. Destruction. Upakateshu. Having overtaken. Vrishni. Of the Vrishni dynasty. Bhojeshu. The Bhoja dynasty. Adhiratha. Great commander. Uddhava. Commander-in-chief. Uddhaveshu. Amongst them. Mukhya. Prominent. Saha. He. Two. Only. Katam. How. Avashishta. Remained. Uddhava. Yat. Whereas. Hari. The personality of Godhead. Api. Also. Tatyaje. Finished. Akrityam. Complete pastimes. Triadisha. The Lord of the three worlds. The king inquired. At the end of the pastimes of the Lord of the three worlds, Sri Krishna, and after the disappearance of the members of the Vrishni and Bhoja dynasties, who were the best of the great commanders, why did Uddhava alone remain? Could everyone hear? Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. According to Sri Jiva Goswami, Nidhanam means the transcendental abode of the Lord. Ni means the highest. Dhanam means opulence. And because the abode of the Lord is the highest manifestation of transcendental opulence, his abode can therefore be called Nidhanam. Apart from the grammatical elucidation, the real purpose of the word Nidhanam is to indicate that all the members of the Vrishni and Bhoja dynasties were direct associates of the Lord. And after the end of his pastimes, all the associates were dispatched to their respective positions in the transcendental abode. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur elucidates the meaning of akritya as pastimes. A means complete, and kritim means transcendental pastimes. Since the Lord is identical with his transcendental body, there is no question of his changing or quitting his body. To act in accordance with the rules and customs of the material world, the Lord seems to take his birth or leave his body. But the pure devotees of the Lord know well the actual fact. It is necessary, therefore, for the serious students of Srimad Bhagavatam to follow the notes and comments of the great acharyas like Jiva Goswami and Vishwanath Chakravarti. To others who are not devotees of the Lord, the comments and explanations of such acharyas may appear to be grammatical jugglery. But to the students who are in the line of disciplic succession, the explanations of the great acharyas are quite fit. The word upagateshu is also significant. All members of Vrishni and Bhoja directly reached the abode of the Lord. Other devotees do not reach the abode of the Lord directly, but the pure associates of the Lord have no attraction for the opulence of any planets of the material world. Sometimes, due to inquisitiveness, devotees who are to be promoted to the abode of the Lord have some attraction for the opulence of the higher material planets above the earth, and thus they desire to see them while going up to the perfection. But the Vrishnis and Bhojas were directly dispatched because they had no attraction for material planets. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur also suggests that according to the Amarakosha dictionary, Akriti also means signal. Lord Krishna ordered Uddhava by signal to go to Badarikashram after his departure. And Uddhava, as a pure devotee of the Lord, carried out the order more faithfully than going back to Godhead. Uddhava, as a pure devotee of the Lord, carried out the order more faithfully than going back to Godhead, or the abode of the Lord. That was the cause of his remaining alone, even after the departure of the Lord from the face of the earth. Om Agyantimidandasya Jnananjana Chalakaya Chakshuru Militam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadhi Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Judapadakkamalam Sri Guru Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatham Sahakana Raghunatham Vidam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Harijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahakana Lalita Sri Vishakan Vidhamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Chakatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sate Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vamsha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale, Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namane. Namaste Saraswati Deve, Gauravani Prachadine, Nirvishesha Shunyavadi, Astatradeshakarine. Before beginning this Bhagavad Gita, Vishaka Priya Devi, we want to thank you for taking so good care of Dwarkadish Prabhu in his health crisis. Dwarkadish Prabhu had a very serious crisis in his health and had a very significant surgery just a few days ago. And by Shri Radha Gopinath, Srila Prabhupada, the Vaishnava's mercy, he is recovering nicely. And my sincerest request to all the assembled Vaishnavas is we all offer prayer for him, for Krishna's blessings to be upon him in every way. Hare Krishna, thank you. The king inquired, at the end of the pastimes of the Lord of the three worlds, Sri Krishna, and after the disappearance of the members of the Vrishni and Bhoja dynasties, who were the best of the great commanders? Why did Uddhava alone remain? I am very grateful to have this opportunity at Shri Radha Gopinath Temple to be in your presence. The holiest of all holy places is where we are most immersed in remembering Krishna. The association of devotees is Krishna's supreme gift to help us to be absorbed in remembering Krishna. And that principle is very much at the heart of this particular story we are studying from Srimad Bhagavatam presently. We are reading from Canto 3, Chapter 4, entitled Vidura Approaches Maitreya, text 28. In the previous chapters, we find Uddhava meeting Vidura on the bank of Yamuna, the sacred river. Vidura was Krishna's very, very dear, intimate, loving uncle. And Uddhava was Krishna's cousin brother and dearmost friend. They were both in great crises in their life, and simultaneously they were both totally absorbed in that crisis, in the deepest love and separation from Krishna. Vidura had been rejected, insulted, banished from his home, his family, with nothing but his breath. That was Duryodhana's cruelty. Because Vidura was a sincere well-wisher and spoke the truth about what is for the true well-being for Dhritarashtra, from Duryodhana, from the whole Kuru and Pandav dynasty. Without diplomacy, which he tried for many years, but it was coming to a critical condition where he could see it was going to be a war. So he spoke strongly, with actual respect and compassion, like a physician will diagnose a disease. And Duryodhana was so outraged. He scolded his own uncle, the chief minister and best friend of Dhritarashtra his whole life, and his personal brother. Dhritarashtra had two brothers, Pandu and Vidura, and Pandu had left the world years before, but Vidura remained at his side through everything, so faithfully, trying to help him. And yet Dhritarashtra allowed Duryodhana to speak such cruel words that pierced Vidura's heart like sharp arrows. And Duryodhana's words, he called him the son of a kept mistress. Now, if somebody says that about you now, you think it's some modern song they're singing. But at that time, to insult a person's mother, nothing could be more extreme. And he told him, you must get out. You leave this kingdom, your palace, your everything, and the only thing I allow you to take with you is your breath. He was hurt. It actually totally displaced his whole lifestyle. Sometimes when there's a change in our lifestyle, it's very disruptive. He was disrupted, but with his knowledge of the eternal soul and the absolute truth of Krishna and the conclusion of all knowledge, bhakti, he took shelter of Krishna. And by doing so, by remembering Krishna in this way, he could see it as a blessing. He could see that this is Krishna's blessing. He's giving me an opportunity to go on pilgrimage. This is greatness. The test of difficult times is the actual criteria of what a great soul is. And this is what we find throughout Mahabharata, Ramayana, Srimad Bhagavatam, and actually all the great scriptures of the world throughout history. Great souls are always glorified by the Lord by Him putting them in difficulties. Sometimes difficulties that are so beyond our abilities to humble us that we cannot imitate. Mahajano yena gadasa bandha. But we follow in their footsteps. One of the 12 Mahajans we're supposed to follow is Yamaraj. In fact, he's the one who spoke this verse that we should follow the Mahajan's footsteps. He spoke who the Mahajans are. And that Yamaraj is Vidura. He was in a very humble position. Can you imagine someone who was actually Yamaraj himself accepting such abuse and insult? And just humbly bowing down and going on pilgrimage? This is Vidura. And he traveled by foot for years. And it is described, he actually knew what happened, but he couldn't really accept it in his heart. So in a sense, he understood, but he didn't understand. And he met on the Yamuna bank Uddhava. And Uddhava is describing to Vidura his own crisis and grief in life. Unimaginable. From the time Krishna was 10.5 years old, he left Sri Vrindavan and went to Mathura. And from that time, Uddhava was his very best friend. Really like brothers. Of course, Balaram. But Uddhava was the devotee that all the Brishni, Bojas, Yadus, they all recognized and respected Uddhava as dearmost. Krishna would dine with him, consult him, reveal his mind to him, make plans with him. They were constant companions. And Uddhava has just witnessed his entire family and dynasty, the Brishnis, the Bojas, the Yadus, they had all left the world in a most inconceivable fight with each other. How that must have hurt him. The higher our consciousness, the more attuned we are with sensitivity while we're taking shelter of the Lord. Detachment doesn't mean you don't feel it. Detachment means that the pangs of this world do not interrupt, but rather they enhance your absorption in taking shelter of Krishna and serving Krishna's instructions. Imagine a mother or father, how much it hurts when your children are fighting, when your parents are fighting, especially if the Yadus, they weren't just fighting, they were really fighting. They actually killed each other. And Uddhava is saying this, and he's the well-wisher of people on both sides. in many ways, that experience that Arjuna had before the Bhagavad Gita was spoken, he could see if this battle is fought, how many of the people he loves will be gone. So Bhagavad Gita was spoken before the battle. And now we find Uddhava, Krishna instructed Uddhava actually, and told him what was happening and what was going on. And then Uddhava witnessed. And just after that, there was no one left in his life except Krishna. And Krishna went to Prabhas Kshetra and sat under a banyan tree. And he left. What was Uddhava's state? What was Vidura's state? In such a high level of ecstatic love and devotion, but in a circumstance of quite inconceivable emotional crisis. So Uddhava explains to Vidura what happened in Kurukshetra. And Vidura, emotionally, he knew, but when he heard the news, it was like hearing for the first time. Uddhava is sharing with Vidura what happened in Kurukshetra. And what happened, he informed Vidura that now Krishna has left the world with our whole dynasty. And in previous chapters, Uddhava's remembering Krishna in great ecstasy, remembering his pastimes in Vrindavan, remembering his pastimes in Mathura, Dwarka. And actually, in remembering Krishna and discussing Krishna's pastimes and describing Krishna's qualities and formed, Uddhava was fully and perfectly, deeper than any other way, he was experiencing the presence of Krishna. Vidura he wants to know more and more from Uddhava. Uddhava sharing in this chapter how at the time when Krishna was instructing him, he told Uddhava that everyone will be gone and I will be gone, but I want you to go to Badrikashram. I want you to stay behind. And in this verse today, Maharaj Pariksit, who's hearing from Shukadev Goswami, is inquiring, why did Krishna do this to Uddhava? Srila Prabhupada is citing from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur that every single member of the Vrishni and Bhoja dynasty, they went back home, back to Godhead. They went to the spiritual world to return to the eternal pastimes of the Lord beyond material existence. How wonderful is that? Externally, it may have seemed that they were chastising each other and they were fighting each other. But internally, they were actually completely beyond all this. Similar to Bhagavad Gita, Krishna actually put Arjuna in a state of bewilderment so that the Bhagavad Gita could be spoken. And similarly, by Krishna's internal energy, he put the Brishnis and Bhojas in a state where they are actually really hurting each other. And they got intoxicated together. There's an external message. We shouldn't get intoxicated. And another external message is how deeply dangerous it is to speak harsh words and hurt other devotees. Even if there's some external reason for doing it. But it was Krishna's arrangement because Krishna was going to leave the world, and therefore he was immediately transporting them to the Vaikuntha, where they have eternal pastimes with Krishna. So in that sense, it's wonderful. We cannot imagine what it would be like to be personally watching Krishna's Leelas every day, year after year, and interacting with him. And when Krishna was living in Mathura and then Dwarka, like in Vrindavan, every person who was there was feeling an intimate connection with Krishna. During Rasa Leela, Krishna is making each gopi feel Krishna's only with me. And in Vrindavan, every cow, every calf, every bird, every flower, every leaf on the tree, what to speak of all the gopis and the gopas and the brahmins and everyone else, they're all feeling intimately loved by Krishna. They feel intimate attention from Krishna. Whether it's feeling the sambhog or the personal interactions with Krishna or in separation. And similarly, in Dwarka, everyone is feeling Krishna's personal love and care, whatever their particular role may be. Of course, we know Krishna was living in 16,108 palaces to live with 16,108 queens simultaneously, and each queen was thinking, Krishna's only in my palace. That is Krishna's power to love, to reciprocate love. And actually, it's not just the queens, it's everyone is feeling how Krishna cares about them so much. So Krishna did not want to subject the Yadu dynasty, all his beloved relatives, to his leaving the world. So he sent them back home, back to Godhead, the spiritual world, to greet him when he comes back. So instead of suffering the loss of him, they were going to rejoice reuniting with him. So actually the Brishnis and the Bhojas were very, very fortunate. They received so much blessing, but in such an inconceivable way, to teach us a essential message of Vaishnava relationships. And however advanced we are, we have to be very careful. King Pariksit is inquiring in today's verse. Krishna gave such a blessing to the Vrishnis and Bojas. Just immediately go to the spiritual world. And it's described in this purport that not a single one of them even wanted to observe, or as we say in English, check out what the heavenly planets may be. And they were going right by it. It's like if you're on your way somewhere and there's some really beautiful, majestic, Taj Mahal or something, and you don't even look out the window because you're just so concerned with where you're going. They had no desire to see heavenly planets, even though they went right by them. They were just so eager to go back to be with Krishna and to serve Krishna. But Uddhava was told to stay in the material world and feel separation from Krishna. Because Krishna wanted Uddhava to speak to the great sages, Narayan Rishi and the other yogis in Badrikashram, about the topics Krishna instructed Uddhava, which is even beyond what Krishna spoke in Bhagavad Gita. So we have in the later cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam the Uddhava Gita, which is many, many chapters, almost an entire 11th canto of Krishna instructing Uddhava in the science of bhakti, which is like the postgraduate study of Bhagavad Gita. And in these purports, in these verses, Srila Prabhupada is citing from the Acharyas that the 4 slokas that Krishna spoke to Brahma at the very beginning of creation, the original guru of all gurus was instructing the original guru of our universe. Krishna's teaching Brahma. Very historical event. And these nutshell verses, the 4 verses from Srimad Bhagavatam, of course, they are explained very eloquently, that those same principles in the Bhagavad Gita. But Krishna's message, his Gita to Uddhava, was even deeper, beyond, and more intimately. Krishna entrusted this message to Uddhava. And he wanted to spread it in Badrikashram so that whatever he spoke, not only in the 11th canto we hear Krishna's message to Uddhava. But Sukadeva Goswami is also hearing Uddhava's explanations of those teachings and Uddhava's realizations of those teachings that Krishna entrusted him. So much of what Sukadeva Goswami is speaking to Maharaj Pariksit is interconnected with what Sukadeva Goswami heard as far as Uddhava's teachings about Krishna. We know how Krishna sent Uddhava to Vrindavan from Mathura to give his message to all the gopas and gopis. And Uddhava being disciple of Brihaspati, the guru of the demigods, vastly learned, a direct participant and observer of Krishna's life and teachings. And actually of all the Yadu dynasty, Vrishni dynasty, Bhoja dynasty, of everyone, Krishna considered him to be the highest, most qualified person to bring his message to the Brijvasis. And when he saw the love of the Vrindavan devotees, he prayed, he cried, he did tapasya to be a blade of grass near Govardhan so that they could step upon him with their feet. And by getting the dust of the feet, he could serve them in such a humble way that association of being their humble servant he could follow in their footsteps. That's an interesting way of following in somebody's footsteps, is to be a blade of grass under their feet. That was his prayer. Uddhava, who was most learned in every way and was most advanced in bhakti, he doesn't want to even go back to Godhead. He wants to be under the dust of the lotus feet of the gopis and gopas of Vrindavan. This message, Krishna is giving to the whole world. And Rupa Goswami describes when Uddhava returned to Mathura and described what he saw and what his realizations were. Then he understood that actually Krishna organized for him to go just so that he can go deeper into his love in the mood of the residents of Vrindavan. And putting all these things together, Krishna's instructions to him, Krishna's mercy upon him, Uddhava's own personal qualities. That is why Krishna wanted him to stay in the world and share what he was entrusted with. This is a very important meditation for devotees. Whatever blessings, knowledge, realizations, experiences we've realized in our life in devotional service, they don't belong to us. They're actually entrusted to us, so that on behalf of Krishna, as instruments of Krishna, we can help others. What a beautiful realization this is, that's at the heart of a Vaishnav Sangha, or community. We have nothing to be envious of. We have nothing to be egoistically proud of. Whatever we have belongs to Krishna. He can take it away at any moment. A few days ago was Shivaratri. And many of us were thinking about Lord Shiva's mercy of drinking the ocean of poison to save all living beings from suffering and death. He took it upon himself. And in that chapter it is described that the greatest way of pleasing Krishna is to accept inconveniences and even suffering out of compassion for others. And actually, when the poison was spreading, the demigods approached Vishnu. And he could have just sent a Sudarshan Chakra to dry up the poison. Or by his mere thought, the poison would have turned to nectar. Krishna can do anything. But he told all demigods, come with me, let us go to Lord Shiva, he will save us. Because Krishna wanted to give the glory to Shiva. He showed the universal form, Virat Rupa, to Arjuna, which very strongly illustrated that I could end this war in a moment, but I want you to get the credit. So the devotee wants to give all glory to Krishna, and Krishna wants to give glory to the devotee. This is actually the spiritual world. So, Krishna staged it in this wonderful way so that Uddhava could remain in such a way that we learn whatever we have, it's Krishna's property entrusted to us. And what is devotional service? It means to share what Krishna has entrusted to us according to Krishna's wish. Krishna glorified Lord Shiva by having him drink the ocean of poison, and everyone was glorifying him. And then in the same story, a little later, he bewildered Lord Shiva. And right in front of the same demigods, he started chasing Mohini Murti. In the story of the drinking of the ocean of poison, he's asking permission from Parvati to drink this poison. And she's blessing him. But when Mohini Murti came, he didn't ask Parvati Parvati's standing there, and Lord Shiva, the greatest of yogis, and there's all these most renowned sadhus. You know, what would the Naga Babas think seeing Lord Shiva chasing a young lady? But this was, Krishna entrusted Lord, through this beautiful narration, Krishna is entrusting Mahadev, Shiva, with the power to show himself as the supreme Vaishnava and the supreme most compassionate. But he's also, I can take it away too. But in this case, he's not taking it away. He's just, by his internal energy, showing special lessons to the world. And the glory, one of the glories of Lord Shiva, according to Srimad Bhagavatam's narration, Lord Shiva was grateful that Krishna revealed his own glories by bewildering him. It wasn't like he was ashamed, because he wasn't thinking of himself. If we were to do something like that in front of our wife, or our godbrothers for brahmacharis, and in front of all demigods who just glorified you, it would be quite painful. But Lord Shiva was in ecstasy, because he wasn't thinking of how it affects his ego. He was affecting how people have a more comprehensive understanding of Krishna as the cause of all causes, the absolute truth, and the ultimate source of everything. If Krishna wants to bewilder me, and how did he bewilder him? Because Krishna took such a beautiful form. Mohini Murti was not just a young lady. She was Krishna himself or herself. That depends on your perspective. That's a very important part of this lesson. Lord Shiva was not thinking, why did I do this, my ego. He was thinking, how glorious is Krishna. He was thinking of Krishna's glories. And that is why Vaishnavanam Yata Shambhu. He's greatest Vaishnava. It's not only because he drank the point, but because who he is in every situation. Uddhava, he was entrusted. He was entrusted by his dearmost friend and worshipable Lord Krishna, the realization of the gopis' love. He was entrusted with the Uddhava Gita, and he had an infallible memory where he could repeat every word exactly the way Krishna spoke it. And from Brihaspati, he learned all the various branches of the Vedas and Vedanta. And he was entrusted not only with the full knowledge in every detail, but the conclusion of bhakti being the ultimate, and unmotivated, uninterrupted loving being the essence of that ultimate. And the residents of Vrindavan, the gopis, and ultimately Sri Radha as the ultimate of the essence of the ultimate. And we find in these beautiful verses, Uddhava's crying in separation from Krishna. But yet, and in this particular purport, which is actually the very basis of this whole class we're trying to inspire, Lord Krishna ordered Uddhava by signal to go to Badrikashram after his departure. And Uddhava, as a pure devotee of the Lord, carried out the order more faithfully than going back to Godhead. Everyone else went back to Godhead, but he stayed on in the pangs of separation, because for him there was no question. Carrying out the order of the Lord, rendering service to the Lord, is more important than going back to Godhead. Ahoitakiya pratihatai, in such a intimate manifestation. Brahman realization is realization of Krishna's impersonal aspect, where there's total liberation from all suffering and complete, absolute peace. Just recently, before this event of today's verse, there was the battle of Kurukshetra. There was the battle of the Yadus. So many things happening in this world. Krishna's gone. What an upheaval that is. Brahman realization is total, absolute peace. And it's not like just the peace in this world. It's because the peace in this world is when there's just no suffering, when there's no disturbance. It's peace in this world is just total relief. Yes? And that relief is actually quite ecstatic. Brahmananda, the Ananda of Brahm. In this world, if we could just be peaceful. It's a great goal. But Brahmananda is the peace of one's existence, just being totally immersed in the Absolute, in Krishna's effulgence. No, I'm not promoting impersonal. But at the same time, as devotees, we shouldn't just think, oh, it's just like, it's just like going to sleep or something. It's a very exalted position of happiness. In the sense, we're not just at peace, but we're in absolute peace. We are immersed with nothing else around except just being within the rays of Krishna's body. I mean, that's really an ecstatic idea. What to speak of experience. So the more we appreciate what the ecstasy of Brahman realization is, the more we'll actually appreciate what bhakti is and prema. Rupa Goswami tells that absorption in absolute peace of existing within the effulgence of Krishna, which is completely beyond the changes and the discrepancies of material nature. And all the other rays of Krishna's body in that Brahman abode are also in a state of just being absorbed in the rays of Krishna. But that ecstasy is not even a drop in comparison to the ocean of the Ananda or the ecstasy of Premananda. The ecstasy of being engaged in the reciprocal personal loving service of the Lord in Vaikuntha. And of all Vaikunthas, the most inclusive, highest and deepest form of that pure ecstatic love. Brahmananda is a drop compared to Vaikuntha. And Vaikuntha is insignificant compared to the love of the residents at Vrindavan. The highest of the Vaikunthas, where Krishna is attracting the hearts of all of the devotees. So his whole family, they went to meet Krishna in the spiritual world. But Krishna told Uddhava, you stay back, because I've entrusted you with such a blessing of my mercy, and you must share it with the world. And in many ways, the Srimad Bhagavatam, Shukadev Goswami is sharing so much of what Krishna entrusted to Uddhava. And today, Radha Gopinath Temple, at this time in Kali Yuga where there's so much conflict and fighting and confusion and suffering and disease and death in this world, we are all here at the lotus feet of Sri Radha Gopinath, among each others, sharing what Krishna entrusted to Uddhava. Why? Because Uddhava lovingly agreed to carry out the order more faithfully than going back to Godhead. And in this chapter there's another verse I'd like, or a line from Srila Prabhupada's Purport. This is just a few verses later. It is written, Shukadev Goswami says, understanding that he was remembered by Lord Krishna while quitting this world, Vidura began to cry loudly, overwhelmed by the ecstasy of love. After Uddhava was remembering Krishna and explaining all these things to Vidura, he concluded by describing how after Krishna went to this very young banyan tree on the bank of the Saraswati River and sat down. The Yadu dynasty was gone. And Uddhava, in devotional love, almost it feels like he was a desperate love. He followed Krishna. Everything's gone. And now Krishna's leaving. So he followed him, and then under that banyan tree, Krishna instructed Uddhava. And it was at that time that Maitreya Muni, very, very great devotee, he was a disciple of Parasara Muni, the father of Vyasadeva. And Maitreya and Vyasadeva were dear friends and well-wishers of each other. And he was wandering, and by Krishna's divine arrangement, Maitreya Rishi just happened to come right to the tree where Krishna was meeting Uddhava. And although Maitreya Rishi was very senior, he was like father's age to Uddhava. Maitreya Rishi, very humble, he sat and listened to Krishna instructing Uddhava. So at the end of the discussion between Vidura and Uddhava, Vidura is asking Uddhava, what did Krishna teach you? Krishna explained his own Uddhava explained his own realizations and his remembrances. Uddhava said, Maitreya Rishi is senior to me. He's like my father's age. He was there when Krishna left this world. You should inquire from him. Such etiquette. Uddhava was actually more spiritually advanced. But out of etiquette, because ultimately, why do we instruct anyone? To please Krishna. Because if Krishna's pleased, we're actually empowered to help someone else. So Uddhava, who was the most learned, the most intimately serving Krishna in love, for the pleasure of Krishna, he was following Vaishnava culture. This highlights the significance of Vaishnava culture. What is Vaishnava culture? What pleases Krishna? There are many details. There are many various prescribed duties in Vaishnava cultures. There's many characteristics of Vaishnava is meant to strive to live with. But essentially and ultimately, when we put it all together, Vaishnava culture means to speak, to act, and to interact in a way that Krishna's pleased. And this is where Mahajano Yena Gatasa Banta is important. Because we have teachings, but how do the great souls follow these teachings? That's where we really find Vaishnava culture. Uddhava knew everything, but he understood that Krishna will be pleased if I humble myself before a senior devotee, Maitreya. And he told Vidura he should be your guru to instruct you, because he's senior to me and he was there. And then the entire canto of Srimad Bhagavatam is Vidura's discussion with Maitreya Muni. And so much of what we know of the various avatars of the Lord are forever glorified as the words of Maitreya Rishi. In this way, Vidura is putting himself aside so Maitreya Rishi could be eternally famous as our gurus. Everyone who reads Bhagavatam, Maitreya Rishi is a guru. He's teaching us the story of Lord Varaha and so many others. Before Vidura approached Maitreya, on the bank of Yamuna, after Uddhava spoke these words, he left. And for several days, Uddhava remained on the bank of the Yamuna. And he was crying, because in Uddhava's words, Uddhava shared with him that Krishna remembered Vidura at the last stage of his own pastimes at Prabhashchandra. Now, if a devotee feels that we deserve something, we don't really feel grace and gratitude, and we can't really express love as long as there's false pride in our heart. But when we really honestly and earnestly feel ourselves undeserving and insignificant, then we really feel like a downpour of grace, and when we receive a blessing. And it's described here because Vidura felt himself so insignificant that Krishna remembered me. The gratitude and the love that Krishna's remembrance incited in Vidura's heart because of his humility. This interactive power between the Lord's mercy and a devotee's loving reciprocation is very much built on the realization of a devotee's gratitude and humility. If most people were in positions, externally roles of Mahajans, and someone told you Krishna remembered you, you would then go, very nice, very nice. But Vidura felt himself so insignificant and so unqualified. Krishna's remembering me. At such a special moment, Krishna remembered me. He remained, after Uddhava left, he remained for days crying. In that sense of gratitude that Krishna remembered me. And it wasn't like he was thinking, Krishna remembered me, that means that now I'm the guru. He's crying in gratitude, Krishna remembered me at the end, now I will go to my Treya Rishi and surrender to him. And we will read this again. Understanding. Are you still awake? Understanding that he was remembered by Lord Krishna while quitting this world, Vidura began to cry loudly, overwhelmed by the ecstasy of love. The words here are Ruroda Prema Vivala. And Srila Prabhupada writes in this purport, and I am actually going to end here. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Vidura was overwhelmed by the ecstasy of love when he understood that Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, thought of him at the last moment. Although he thought of himself as insignificant, he was remembered by the Lord, by his causeless mercy. Vidura accepted this as a great favor, and thus he cried. Please open your hearts to receive this message of Srila Prabhupada. This crying is the last word in the progressive path of devotional service. This crying is the last word in the progressive path of devotional service. One who can cry for the Lord in love is certainly successful in the line of devotional service. Thank you very much. question? When I asked if there was any questions, I was very much asking with the hope that Ananda Vrindavan Prabhu may ask a question. Yes.
Maharaj, after spending years and years in devotional life, we come to one conclusion. I don't know about others, but I came to my conclusion is, causeless mercy is the only hope in our spiritual life to get out from the mess which we have created it. There's no other way. Only causeless mercy, because the time which we have in this material world, in this body, that much time we are not going to come to a perfection level. Even if we try our level best, even if we prove our sincerity, even if you prove our consistency also, finally the only conclusion comes up is Krishna's causeless mercy in my life. And that's the only way I can get out from the mess which I have created in this life. Now the one fear that comes in our life is, Maharaj, that years are going by, the success, the anarthas which are there in our heart has not been uprooted. We are struggling. Definitely some success has come up. That's why we are in devotional life. But it is not uprooted. It can, and the time which is there, it is so small enough now that we don't feel it, that the past background, past history which we have seen it. Only so many years we have gone and only some anarthas have gone out. And now only few years are there. It will not be uprooted. So the one fear that comes in our life is, will I get causeless mercy, or still Krishna wants us to go on suffering year and year and year? Because finally it is a causeless mercy. We cannot demand, we are a beggar. If Krishna wants to give it, he can give it. If he doesn't want to give it, we have to rot in this place itself. So and we are not like Uddhava or Bhoja dynasty or Vrishni dynasty, where we are going to get a ticket for going back home, back to Godhead. And at the same time, we are not so elevated like Uddhava also, that Krishna has some plan for us, that he is going to keep us over here and do something for him. We are not on that level. So we have only one clarity, just wanted to get a causeless mercy and get out from this mess. So Maharaj, I just wanted to know it, that before we leave our body, now very few years are there in this body, success has not come, anarthas has not gone. At the same time, we know it, that causeless mercy is the only shelter. Will Krishna give us some indication before we leave our body that we will getting that causeless mercy? And if he doesn't want to give it, even if Krishna gives us that indication, no, you have to come up again and again. At least mentally we prepare ourselves that I have to come here. I have to come here, and again I have to go through birth, death, old age, disease, and I have to go on, because we are helpless, Maharaj. All the anarthas are not going to be uprooted in this small span of time. And the only shelter is begging in front of Lord, please give me the causeless mercy. And we don't know what Krishna has decided for us. So when we are about to leave the body, if we can get some indication that what Krishna has decided, mentally we prepare for it and accept it out. So can you just tell us, Maharaj, what type of indication Krishna can give us before we leave our body?
Krishna has entrusted the indication through you to all of us. This is the indication Krishna's entrusted, that surrendering to Krishna's causeless mercy is the only means. There's no other means for prema. And how we surrender to Krishna's causeless mercy, that's what the life of devotional service is. Krishna's order is the means, the instructions Krishna is giving in Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam are historical examples, philosophical descriptions, practical instructions by which we learn how to surrender to Krishna's causeless mercy. And there is infinite hope, even in the presence of so many anarthas and everything else that are in us and around us. If they weren't there, we probably would not be surrendering to causeless mercy. If we thought we were advanced, we may surrender to mercy. But when we really feel ourselves unqualified, then we surrender to causeless mercy. And actually, you cannot go back to Godhead by surrendering to mercy. You can only attain love of Krishna by surrendering to causeless mercy. And that is why even the greatest saints, Patita Pavana Hetu, Tava Avatar, Narottam Das Thakur is praying, I'm the most fallen. You are Patita Pavana, you've come to deliver the most fallen, I am the most fallen. So please consider bestowing your causeless mercy on me. And Rupa and Sanatan Goswami in their prayers, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami in his prayers, and all the great acharyas in their prayers, they are all, even in the purest, highest state, even the gopis, even Radharani, in the most ultimate state, is crying for causeless mercy. So what is our position? But in our conditioned state, if we didn't feel ourselves having anarthas, and in the case of these supremely greatest souls, they have no anarthas. They are the pure embodiments, personifications of intimate ecstatic love. But yet they're thinking that way, because it's in that thinking of that way, they're absorbing the deepest experience of surrendering and receiving Krishna's reciprocation in surrender. Because Krishna reciprocates according to our surrender. In this world, according to our surrender, Krishna reciprocates by actually rising our consciousness above anarthas. But and then in the spiritual world, Krishna still reciprocates according to our surrender in pure, unmotivated, uninterrupted love. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught that we should take shelter of the gopis' surrender. They're considered the supreme renunciates. When the description of the Ras Lila in the 10th canto, Shukadev Goswami describes when Krishna was under the Bamsibat tree on bank of Yamuna, playing upon his flute, calling each gopi. The pure-hearted gopis surrendered everything and went to Krishna, and Krishna reciprocated with their surrender. And how did he reciprocate? They all came to him and he told them to go home. And that increased their surrender. And then he left. He disappeared. And that increased their surrender even more. And then he returned. And the Rasa Lila was there. And for those gopis who had even any tinges, and they weren't allowed to actually even go to the Rasa Lila, they were held back. They surrendered to Krishna in their inability to go. And in doing that, whatever traces of disqualification they may have had, it was completely burned away by Krishna, because Krishna reciprocated with that surrender, where they felt they had these anarthas and they couldn't go. And then they could go. So, in whatever state we're in, Krishna reciprocates with our surrender. If we think we're advanced, then we will surrender to Krishna's mercy, because we understand Krishna reciprocates with my surrender. But if we want real prema, we surrender to Krishna's causeless mercy, which means I'm not entitled to that mercy, and I'm not qualified for that mercy. But Krishna's so kind. Krishna's Karuna Sindhu. He's an ocean of compassion. And if I simply surrender to that causeless mercy, I know for sure that Krishna will be pleased. And if I'm surrendered in this way, Krishna could do whatever he wants with me. He could trample on me, embrace me, leave me broken-hearted. This is the depth of true surrender in the line of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to causeless mercy. So what indication Krishna gives us? According to our surrender, Krishna will be there with us. But this is our life, preparing ourselves to surrender to Krishna's causeless mercy, as you so eloquently described. Ananda Vrindavan Prabhu has a certain entrusted gift that in the preface to his question, he thoroughly answers his question. And over the years I've learned that all I have to do is listen carefully. And memorize his preface. And I'll have the perfect answer to his question. I've said it before, but it would be appropriate for you to recite Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya before you ask your question. Yes, Srila. Does that answer your question? Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, one of the most painful thing for us as devotees over the years is extremely painful to see our fellow devotees suddenly going through crisis. And these are the devotees who are obviously extremely dedicated in their lives already. And still they go to the crisis. And on the other side, Srila Prabhupada has taught us that we should be praying for Sarva Sukhino Bhavantu, let there be happiness everywhere, let there be peace, let it be. Obviously, that very much applies to our devotee communities. So there's a dichotomy, there's a confusion in our minds, Maharaj, that if we do pray that devotees remain happy, and as you mentioned in the class, that Krishna shows his supreme mercy when devotees go through crisis. So if we are praying that devotees should not go through crisis, then we are actually praying that devotees don't show your supreme mercy on the devotee. And this is extremely painful to see the devotee suffering. So I'm not sure whether I could really word my question, Maharaj, but...
I don't think you did. It is true. In a community of devotees, we should be striving, thriving in seeing devotees happy. Sarve Sukhino Bhavantu, a devotee wants to see every living being happy. What to speak of devotees? It's not that if we're praying for a devotee's happiness, that we're impeding their receiving causeless mercy. We want devotees to be happy on every level. Physically, emotionally, but most important, spiritually. And the only happiness spiritually is in our surrender and taking shelter of Krishna. That's where spiritual happiness can be found, and actually nowhere else. In proportion to how we're surrendering and taking shelter of Krishna, there's spiritual happiness. But we want happiness for devotees on all levels, and therefore we strive to provide that. You know, if a person, Dwarkadish Prabhu, and so many devotees we have had health crisis, and we're there to help them in every way. We're there to help our children. We're there to help our community when they're on their deathbed, and the grieving of the relatives after the passing away of a devotee. There's crises. And it's not when we just say, just surrender to Krishna and take shelter of Krishna. We're there to cry with them, to feel for them, to help them on every level. When Srila Prabhupada, there's so many stories of devotees who had illnesses and sicknesses, and Srila Prabhupada didn't just say surrender to Krishna. He did say surrender to Krishna, but he also was right there to engage all the resources he had to help that devotee on all these different levels. Srila Prabhupada was very concerned devotees got nice prasad. He didn't just say you just feed them anything because it's offered to Krishna. He wanted devotees to be happy. He wanted devotees to be happy at every level. And as devotees, we should be really concerned, and our community should come together so that devotees could be happy on all levels, physical, emotional, spiritual. So that's what we're striving for. But we should know with all certainty that this is the material world. And whether you're a devotee or not a devotee, crisis, heartbreak, and suffering are inevitable. We don't want devotees to have to struggle these things. We should individually and collectively be helping devotees when they're struggling these things. But still we know the dynamics of being a devotee in the material world is devotees will struggle with these things. There will be all these heartbreaking situations. So what makes us a community of devotees? That we're well-wishers, And when these sufferings are going through, it is our service to help. And it is our service to help each other especially to seek and find shelter in Krishna in these situations. We shouldn't think that because we're in the community of devotees and because a devotee has surrendered his or her life, they're going to be materially happy. Even devotees who surrender the most oftentimes go through great tragedies. And that doesn't mean, it doesn't mean that there's something deficient in them. It means that they're in the material world and these happen. But we're here to help each other to find shelter in Krishna while helping to resolve these crises that happen. And as we actually have a depth of realization of what bhakti really is in this world, we find that we're not surprised even when very senior, advanced, dedicated devotees go through profound crisis in their life. We understand it could happen to anyone at any time. But in that crisis, that devotee can find shelter of Krishna, and as a community we're helping each other to give that shelter. That's our spiritual service. And at the same time, we come together to help in any other way we can. We want devotees to be healthy. Srila Prabhupada, in every letter, he wrote, "I hope this letter meets you in good health." Yes? But Srila Prabhupada knew that everybody he's writing letters to is going to grow old, get disease, and die. Yes? Srila Prabhupada would say, "Chant Hare Krishna and be happy." But he knew every devotee is going to lose their wife and their husband and their mothers and their fathers and everybody else, all their friends. That's the material world. So when we understand Krishna consciousness with maturity, we're not bewildered or perplexed by seeing surrendered souls going through crises in this material world. It's inevitable. Today, tomorrow, one way or another way. But what did Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu give us? Through the chanting of the holy names, hearing and speaking the glories of Krishna. We sing through the shelter of the beauty of Shri Radha Gopinath, or the deities of Krishna. Srila Prabhupada's books are there, and the community of devotees is there. No, we don't want to pray for crisis for a devotee's life. When it's there, everybody comes together to help. But if we're actually hoping that it happens so that we could come together to help, then we're not really coming together to help. And this is part of the inconceivable, almost contradictory dynamics of being spiritual in the material world. We don't want it to happen. But when it does happen, we all come together. But if we're hoping something like this happens before we come together, then we're not really coming together for the right purpose. Does that make sense? You If you think it makes sense, that means you don't really understand it. But no, we wonder, what does it mean to be a well-wisher? We're hoping for the best for everyone. And because we hope for the best, when there is challenge or suffering, then we're there because we're really hoping for the best. And that's a Vaishnava. When we're new devotees, sometimes we think that if I become a devotee, my material life is going to be very, very happy. And sometimes it is, but sometimes it isn't. And when it is, when everything is going very prosperous and everyone's cooperating nicely and everyone's living long and healthy, we thank Krishna. We surrender to Krishna by thanking Him. And when there is disaster and loss, we help each other to thank Krishna then too. Just a few days ago I was with Dwarkadish Prabhu and Vishaka Priya Devi, and it's, can you imagine the stress and the strife? Vishaka Priya Devi is like, but she is such an ideal, faithful, chaste, devoted wife. And her husband is in a state where it could have been, it was actually it was potential massive disaster in his health. And she was telling me that in that state, she was praying, and the whole hospital, Bhaktivedanta hospital, came together. Devotees, doctors, and even the well-wishing who may not be practicing devotees, but they, just by the culture of Bhaktivedanta Hospital, everybody came together to be discussing, because very complex, what to be done, how to find out what it is, how to treat it. And if there was any delay, it would have been tragic. But they came together as a whole community of doctors, and she told me the whole hospital was practically, the whole day was so sober and somber in prayer for Dwarkadish Prabhu. And Vishaka Priya Devi was literally crying, appreciating the culture of the Vaishnava community. Because we don't want these things to happen to devotees, that's why it's so meaningful when we can come together to actually help. What it means to actually be a well-wisher. We're willing to put our life on the line and make sacrifices to help devotees on every level. But the difference between a philanthropic approach of making sacrifice to help each other and the approach that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has entrusted to us is, along with the other help, our primary goal is we've been entrusted with ways that we can help each other by Krishna. And we can please our Guru and Srila Prabhupada by helping each other to find shelter in the causeless mercy of Krishna in every situation. Because if we learn how to do this in life with one another, then we will be able to surrender to the causeless mercy of Krishna at the time of death also. And that's going to happen to everyone. Not only you and me, but everyone we love. Death will come. The causeless mercy of Krishna is to help realize that for the soul there is no death. And the soul's highest aspiration is to surrender to the causeless mercy of Krishna. Does that answer your question?
Like a most profound answer I ever got.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you for a very beautiful class, and the question answers were even more beautiful. Thank you so much. When we hear about these wonderful characters of Srimad Bhagavatam, Vidura's consciousness, Uddhava's consciousness, very, very exalted, and it makes complete sense. I mean, when we hear it from you, it makes complete sense that what was their consciousness, why they acted in this way, and we can admire them. But similarly, when you answered Prabhuji's question, about this waiting for causeless mercy, it makes sense when we are here. But moment we step out of the temple and we go back to our, our lives, again the influence of Maya takes over, and we take decisions which are not exactly devotional. We act in ways which are not exactly devotional, and so sometimes we feel there's a big chasm, big gap between what is really expected by Krishna from us and what we are doing. Just one last point that you spoke about, the gopis, that even those who had a tinge of, little different desire, they could not go to the Ras, they couldn't join the Ras Leela. Our situation is that we have hardly a tinge of bhakti in our hearts. So therefore, while we are here, this makes it's very beautiful, it's very inspiring, but moment we step out, we get consumed by our conditioning and Maya. So how do we balance this out? How do we really try to apply these things in our lives in a practical sense? It seems very exalted what Uddhava has done, that he says that let you speak from it, you hear from it, or he stays back, he doesn't go back to Godhead. Vidura, taking a humble position in front of, he is also an exalted associate of the Lord, but he takes a humble position in front of Maitreya as well as Uddhava. So how do we understand that we will never be able to do this because of our conditioning? We go back to our conditioned ways, we try to be, we try to be superior, we try to take superior positions because of our conditioning. So how do we?
The simple formula of satsang, sadhana, sadachar, seva. The intelligence that Krishna has entrusted with each of us is meant to be applied by our free will to balance our life according to whatever our particular unique situation may be. We have family, we have occupation, some of us. We have health needs. There are so many dimensions of life. And Bhagavad Gita is especially speaking how to balance all of these various callings on various dimensions of life in such a way that it's in harmony with serving Krishna and pleasing Krishna. And satsang, sadhu sangha, association of devotees, and that's what community means, is essential. That we're there to help each other. In giving we do receive, that is a principle of bhakti. And not only in giving do we receive, but in the willingness to receive. We're empowered to give. It goes both ways. And with the faith, Shraddha is the very basis of bhakti. Rupa Goswami describes at the beginning there's Shraddha, and the culmination is prema. But how do we develop Shraddha and protect Shraddha and nourish Shraddha? Through satsang. Adoshrutata sadhu sangha. And with the faith we gain, when the faith that is nourished in sadhu sangha, then we understand the sacred, vital importance of bhajana kriya, of our sadhana. We need to chant the holy names of the Lord. We need to hear the glories of the Lord, especially through, Srila Prabhupada has described the teachings of and the glories of the Lord in such a perfect, practical, accessible way that we can go back home to Goloka Vrindavan and not just by some theory, but by practical application of bhakti to our life. By mature, responsible ways of remembering Krishna in our life. And that's sadhana, bhajana kriya. And if we have good association to nourish our faith, and with that faith we emphasize and prioritize our sadhana, then sadachar. With the strength we get from this, we live with Vaishnav character. We live in the spirit following in the footsteps of the great souls. In Mahabharata, in Ramayana, in Srimad Bhagavatam, the majority of great souls that were meant to follow in footsteps, they were householders. Of course, there's Narada Muni, and in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Srila, he became sannyasi, but in his younger days he was a grihastha. Advaitacharya was grihastha, Srivas Thakur was grihastha. Nityananda Prabhu became grihastha. It was only Gadadhar Pandit who was brahmachari throughout. So that's our Panchatattva. Prahlad, when he was a student he was brahmachari, but then most of his life he was a king. Pariksit Maharaj, of course Sukadeva Goswami was very good brahmachari. But Shravana Kirtana Smarana Vandana, the acharya we follow for hearing was Pariksit Maharaj. It's king. Kirtan, Sukadeva Goswami. Smarana is Prahlad, he was a king. So we find that many kings and great souls, they had so many obligations in life. Far more than any of us. They had families, ministers, kingdoms. Yes? So we're meant to follow in their footsteps because they actually did everything for Krishna's pleasure. And they live with such character of humility, gratitude, fearlessness in the face of adharma. For Krishna's pleasure. And that's, our whole life becomes seva. So Krishna's given each of us a particular role to play, with particular responsibilities. And he's given us this association, sadhana, and these principles of Vaishnava culture by which every aspect of our life can be balanced to become seva. And when we think it's just too difficult and it's too impossible because there's too many bad influences outside, then that's just, we're choosing to make that choice with our intelligence that God has given us. Krishna says that he's the intelligence of the intelligence. We have to use our free will to actually apply our intelligence to balance our lives in such a way, whatever the crisis and whatever the complications and whatever the influences. You're living in the city of Mumbai. So many distractions. But in Kali Yuga, even if you go to a holy place, there'll be so many distractions. So you might as well just do it here. Not just keep postponing it until a better time and a better place and all of that. Does that answer your question? Yes, Nandakumar Prabhu, Haribo.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for your wonderful class. Maharaj, I just had a question. If one commits an offense towards a devotee, intentionally or unintentionally, and he or she realizes it afterwards, after it's too late and after the damage is done, then what should be done to mitigate, or what should be done in that situation? What should be done?
Nandakumar, you never commit any offense. But out of your kindness, you're asking that question for the rest of us. We should understand within our own heart and not let our egos cover up to justify if we've made offenses. As much as possible, we should ask forgiveness for our offenses. As much as possible, we should try to serve the devotees that we have offended, especially. And we should learn lessons. We should learn lessons and help that experience to make us more careful in the future. And the best way to negate negativity is through positivity. The best way to avoid offenses to devotees is to really aspire to serve devotees. But if we have made mistake or whatever, we should learn from that mistake, and we should try in whatever way it's possible. Because Krishna's in our hearts. He wants to see us try to get the forgiveness of the devotees, and he wants to see us being transformed to be more respectful and in a more sincere service mood. Does that answer your question?
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you.
You're welcome. But my answer was not directed to you, it was directed to everyone else. Because we're all trying to become like you, actually. Thank you, Nanda Kumarji, from Haribo. Does any ladies have questions?
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj.
Haribo.
Guru Maharaj, like you gave us the example of Lord Shiva, that he could take his attraction to Mohini Murad as a will of Krishna. But as devotees, sometimes we commit some mistakes and feel miserable, not just in front of devotees, but also in our own eyes. Then how to overcome of that thinking, how to overcome of that miserliness, that and how to ultimately forgive ourselves, thinking it as a will of Krishna. Yes, thank you, Guru Maharaj.
We shouldn't think our mistakes are the will of Krishna. We should think of our mistakes is that we're not living in the will of Krishna. Krishna's will is that we live in the joy of pure devotional service. So when we make mistakes, we shouldn't justify them, but we should be sincere, not to be depressed by them, but rather to actually seek shelter of other devotees for guidance, and seek shelter of our gurus and senior Vaishnavas for strength, and then we sincerely become better through our mistakes. If we're simply depressed by it, but it doesn't bring about positive change, then we don't grow. Even feeling miserable and regretful should actually have a positive effect. It should cause us to deeply realize the changes that are required, and then we should move toward those changes. Sometimes guilt is the mercy of the Paramatma in our heart to reconnect us with what we really aspire for in our life, to make changes, and to be sincere, to take shelter so that we can make those positive changes. Thank you. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you. Your Bhagavatam classes are just so wow. I have a question. How to cry for the Lord? Because I feel our hearts are made of stone. After years of practice, still tears, very rare. So, how to cry?
By asking that question with a sincere heart. Krishna's in his holy names. Krishna's in his words, his pastimes. He's appeared to us in the form of the Archamurti, the deity. It's in the hearts of the devotees. He's essentially in the heart of every living being. Our crying is our sincere humility. Crying to please the Lord, crying to serve the Lord. When we read about Lord Chaitanya crying, his crying was to please Krishna, to serve Krishna. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the final 12 years of his pastimes in Gambhira in Jagannath Puri was mostly spent crying in separation from Krishna. Among devotees like Swarup Damodar Goswami, Ramananda Rai, Raghunath Das Goswami described at those pastimes that he had seen and heard. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami put it in writing. And we are all given this essence of the Bhagavatam. When we feel ourselves truly unqualified, and the more we understand the beauty, the glory, and the mercy and the love of Krishna, the more we feel unqualified. We can only feel qualified when we're actually quite far from understanding the greatness of Krishna's mercy and love. The more we actually understand and realize Krishna, the more humble we become. And how far we are from that. How much we have to cry for. When we're chanting japa, when we're chanting kirtan, when we're hearing attentively, crying doesn't just mean tears coming out of our eyes. When we're chanting the holy names, crying is the spirit of surrender, the spirit of longing to be reconnected with Krishna, to please Krishna, to serve Krishna. Narottam Das Thakur in his song to the departed Vaishnavas, Jaya Nilo Premadana, he's describing how he's beating his head against a rock in his separation from Lord Chaitanya and his associates, these great devotees. So this crying is not just an artificial outburst of tears from eyes. It's actually a way of life. Longing and yearning and humility to please Krishna and to serve Krishna and to remember Krishna and to take shelter of Krishna. Does that answer your question, kind of?
Thank you.
Any purport, Ananda Vrindavan? no question, only purport.
Maharaj, crying for Krishna, you're speaking about crying for Krishna. Gaudiya Sampradaya is specifically, Mahaprabhu is speaking about crying. The biggest problem that we face being a devotee, sometimes we are crying externally we are seeing that I'm crying for Krishna, but internally, some part of it is for crying for Krishna, but internally we are somewhat miserable with material life. Attachment to the material things are there. And because of that attachment, it is not getting fulfilled. We are crying. And we do not understand only that is it crying for Krishna or is it crying for myself or getting some material desire? So how to see to it? How to see to it that I really cry only for Krishna and only Krishna, not for my material things as such. And that is where Krishna is seeing something else and I am seeing something else. So, can you just tell us that how can we check ourselves? How can we check ourselves that we are exclusively only crying for Krishna without any material desire, but only to please him and only to see to it that he is happy with us?
Lord Chaitanya taught us how to cry for Krishna. Nadanam na janam na sundarim kavitam vajagadisha kamaye mama janmani janmanishwari bhavatal bhakti rohaitikam. That is a preliminary state of mind in which he taught us to cry for Krishna. I do not want wealth. I do not want fame. I do not want scholarship. I do not want mystic powers. I do not want sensual pleasures. I do not even want liberation. I just want to serve you for your pleasure, birth after birth after birth. Then he's praying not for the sorrows and the disappointments of this world, but he's praying to be a speck of dust at the feet of Krishna, which means such a state of pure, humble surrender and service. So this is what it means to cry for Krishna. If you study the Shikshastakam verses and the prayers of all the great Vaishnavas, then we learn how to cry for Krishna. Otherwise, yes, the material world is a place we could cry for so many disappointments and unfulfilled emotional and material longings. But we have our scriptures and have our saints in our Gaudiya Sampradaya who are there to teach us how to actually cry for Krishna. Not just with water from our eyes, but from our hearts, and in the way we live and in the values we cultivate. Does that answer your question? Or not question, but does that, is that a good purport to your purport? Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Do you have any announcements? Would you like to have kirtan? You could begin and I'll come right back.
Hare Krishna. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimad Bhakti Vedanta Swami Dinamine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prasarine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Vashadya Deshatarine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Just before Maharaj starts Kirtan, on behalf of all the devotees of Radha Gopinath temple and all the satellite centers, we want to just take a moment to thank His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj for the wonderful, katha, the wonderful kirtans. He has spent a very, very long time with us this time, and 8 months he has spent over here. He has given initiation to thousands of devotees, Brahman Diksha to hundreds of devotees, and he has, he visited so many centers, inaugurated temples, given us wonderful katha, wonderful association. So it is our greatest blessing that we have the association of Radhanath Swami Maharaj for such a long time. So we pray that this period may last for as long as it can. And that he comes back very quickly and continues to give us his blissful association. So let us express our very loving and very enthusiastic gratitude to His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj by loudly chanting Haribo! Haribo!
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Everyone, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Gaura Premanandi. Hari Haraya Namah Krishna Yadavaya Namah. Hari Haraya Namah Krishna Yadavaya Namah. Yadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namah. Gopal Govinda Ram Srimad Sudana. Giridhari Gopinatha Nadana Mohan. Sri Chaitanya Nityananda Sri Advaita Sita. Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavad Gita. Sri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunatha. Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunatha. Hari Haraya Namah Krishna Yadavaya Namah. Yadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namah. Hari Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hari Hari. Hari Rama, Rama Rama, Hari Hari. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Jai Prabhupada, Nitai go Hari go, Hari go, Hari go, Hari go. Radha Gopinath, Radha Gopinath, Radhe. Radha Gopinath, Radha Gopinath, Radhe. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patithanam bhavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namo. Thank you very much.
जानवर से लॉक